So I'll be speaking to us also in line with the issues that have been raised, couple of contemplations that I have as concerns our generation and people going into relationship. In a wider context, I'll have this message as maybe securing the next generation, next generation. And that's what I'll be sharing about. I don't have any scripture, so you can put any scripture to it that you like. That works. All right. So, when we talk about relationships, when we talk about singlehood, when we talk about being single, there are a lot of things that we should consider before going into relationships. There are certain things that should be sorted out before going into relationships. And even if you wouldn't go into a relationship or you're not interested in marriage or relationships, to live in the normal world, to be a social person, to be a person who is beneficial to the society, there are also certain things that you must pay attention to. There are certain things that you must live your life by. Especially in the kind of world we found ourselves in this present generation, and then we'll make reference to the Gen Z, we'll make reference to the millennials, the certain age that we're in, which is a fast-paced world. So, for example, the Gen Z is a cross of that generation, the first digital natives, where we have the age of the social media, we have the age of smartphones, and then there's that crossing also into big data, artificial intelligence, the Internet of Things. So it's like there's a lot of things going on at the same time. There's a lot of information all over the place. As good as they are, it also gives you so much speed sometimes you can't even take a break, because left, right, and center, there's information everywhere. And so we even have AI now, so that some people believe that their phones are listening to them. And you have the algorithm so that whatever you search, whether you want to see it again or not, the information keeps coming back. So there's information. And so it opens you to a world of information, a world of opportunities, a world of deep research. And so sometimes we necessarily do not know which is correct, which is wrong. We just have information. And with information comes that level of exposure. Sometimes we didn't bargain for the level of exposure. So there are certain things 20 years ago, 30 years ago that were correct, that were nice. And then we are just discovering now that, well, they were not necessarily correct. So, for example, many years ago, if a parent whoops his child, it was all right, praise the name of the Lord. But now some people will say it's abuse. Praise God. Am I communicating? So the way we do this is, if I ask you, you respond sharply so that I know it makes me comfortable. Praise the name of the Lord. All right. Thank you. So, many things have now changed. Now, there's a way marriage was before now, and then there's a way it's not even accepted now again. There are many things that were accepted before, but then there are many things which really were accepted, which were seen as the norm, which was normal culture, which was culture for everyone. But now when you look at it, it's not the same again. And well, would have been saved or would have been safe if we didn't have access to information. You know, perhaps we're just maybe African somewhere, and we didn't have the pop culture. We're just good on our own because, for example, back in the day, if you were going to get married, they'll follow you to your make inquiries in your in-laws' house. And then maybe the people from your village or from your town will travel to the next town. And when we got married, we never saw our parents. The first time we saw our parents was when we were going to get married. Praise the name of the Lord. And my dad spoke to her once. And it was interesting when they spoke. Okay, you ought to marry him. Is that good? Okay, that's fine. That was all he did. So there were not many questions. You know, if we had decided to go that long route, perhaps we'll still be there. The in-laws have to come. They have to know the grandparents and all of that. But everything has changed. everything has changed. In fact, to an extent, what we call morality has changed too. But it's not the same for the believer. It's not the same for we that have called ourselves God's chosen ones. And because what we live by is God's word, what we will continue to live by is God's word. And God's word for us is to give us good lives. Because even with the overload of information that we have, the overload of exposure that we have, it has not necessarily translated into a good life. Praise the name of the Lord. And so there's that whole exposure. And then the question for the present day believer who is a Gen Z or a millennial or Alpha. Is anybody Alpha here? If not, we'd ask you to go home. Or we'll open the room for you there and say, well, children's church, just stay there for a while. But then it's what to do with this information, how to sieve it out. And then it's also in this generation we have that we've come to a high point of discovery of things like depression. And I'll talk about a couple of sensitive things. So we've discovered what depression is. Many years ago, many people will not agree. In fact, many people still do not agree. So if people talk about depression, you see that there's some other side, some people on the other side making mockery of it and say, well, these people do not even know what we went through in our days. You've heard that before. We were dealing with a case some months ago where someone was suicidal and the person ended up in the hospital, And when I spoke with the parent, and the parent was still saying, I don't know what the children of these days, what they think they are going through. And they don't know me. They've not seen me. They don't know how old I am. In fact, in the call, the person has called me daddy. So, so I acted like a daddy. So I said, you better listen to what I'm telling you now. I think maybe in years to come, maybe they'll travel down here to see their kid and they see me. And when they ask who is the pastor, I say, he's in Budapest. I was just the guardian here. So I said, you better listen to me because this is serious. And whatever has gotten anybody to the hospital, I don't care. If it's trivial or not, it's gotten them there. It could have turned around. Perhaps the person could have killed themselves. So we used to be saying, I don't know what these people think they've seen. And so again, we have that information out there. And that is where I want to stay on. That is the point I want to drive on. So we have that information out there now that there's such a thing as depression. There's such a thing as toxicity. There are many things that the current day believer who is a Gen Z, a millennial, is battling with as a result of the things that they are exposed to. And we are aware of the battles. We know a lot of them true. Some maybe not true. And the overarching conversation that looks like the millennials and the Gen Zs are having is, let's talk about this. We need to talk about this more. We need to have our voices heard. We need people to see our pain. And that's true. But seeing your pain, hearing your voices, cannot be the end of the conversation and cannot be the entire conversation that we want to have. Else you just be like people from a particular country, conference after conference on governance. And the people talking about the governance are the people governing. Praise the name of the Lord. You know those conferences? Governance and agriculture as a panacea for, Many years ago, I used to write. So I used to write those things. And sometimes I'm almost crying because I know it's a lie. But we want to keep talking. And I'm saying that our conversations should not just end up in that place where our voices are being heard. What we're looking for is a road to recovery, because now these people who are battling with these things will go on to be in marriages. And if we do not solve the issues before going into relationships and going into marriages, we begin to multiply the battles. Because now these are people who are not fixed. Meeting other people who are not fixed. Getting married in the light of the current information and exposure that they have. So because, for example, very few people will tell their pastors about their relationships. Praise the name of the Lord. In fact, some people will not even tell their parents. Some people will even hide their relationships so much. And so there's all of that going on. And then these people will produce the next generation. And so if this current generation decide not to work on themselves, then the end will be even more terrible than we have now. And we are not in denial of the fact that there are issues. Praise the name of the Lord. There are issues. Young people are going through stuff. And then someone who says or who sees someone saying young people are going through stuff tends to like that conversation and say, hey, they get us. But that's not the solution to it. Praise the name of the Lord. So the solution is that we actually start seeking help. And then from experience, if my experience is anything to go by, and I think it's something to go by, because if you want to have experience in life quickly, you just got to pastor a group of people. Praise the name of the Lord. You know, when Jesus said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light, you know, not to be so spiritual, sometimes I just laugh. I say, this yoke is light by its help. Because when you look around, so I said, if you want to gain experience, maybe you just pastor a group of people or disciple one person that is just getting born again. And then see the amount of baggages that they have that needs to be solved. And then it's you, one man, who is also trying to solve your own things, helping them solve their own things. Pastor, you know. But what I'm saying is that we've got to seek help. And sometimes help away from the church. Praise the name of the Lord. Now that sounds strange to someone. Because immediately we talk about things like depression. Immediately we talk about things like anxiety. For some people, the first thing is to pray. But I'm very aware that many people have told me prayers don't work. All right? But they keep coming to me. And all I can give them is prayers. So I'm saying wherever we can find help, legally. Praise the name of the Lord. So, firstly, I'm talking about medical science. Medical science is God's idea. And then, but if we don't fix our mental issues and we fall in love with people who also have mental health issues, praise the name of the Lord, we'll get deeper in that hole. That's what I'm saying. And at that point, it becomes difficult to come out. Because before getting into marriage, before getting into a relationship, perhaps you've never had the idea of what a relationship is. But then you come in with the baggages, you come in with the issues, you come in with whatever toxicity that life has thrown at you. And then you meet another person inside of it. Meanwhile, marriage is a good thing. Relationships are good. Praise the name of the Lord. You know, everybody's saying, God, when? Because you love relationships. You know, some people, especially Christian brothers, I remember one particular guy. I said, bro, how far? I said, how's your girlfriend? He said, me. He said, no. Now, one day, the guy was asking me, he said, how do I balance things? I said, balance, eh? He fell in love. His eyes were... And then he was now asking for balance. But before, when I was asking him, he said, no, I'm just facing my books. Praise God. So love is good, eh? All right. And you should desire to fall in love. But what I'm saying is that, so you have these people who have not worked on themselves, and then they come into a relationship. Now that's two different people with two different things pushing them, two baggages, or just a lot of things that are unsolved. And then there's a tendency as people for us not to see the issues going wrong with us. Not to see the things that are wrong with us. Praise the name of the Lord. Because if you ask everybody, they'll tell you they are innocent. Have you seen two people in a relationship, there's an issue, nobody agrees, they're on the wrong side. Amen? Maybe you're guilty. So everybody is right. It's me. Why can't it? That's how I've grown up. That's how we do things in my home. But then, not everybody grew up in your own house or in your own home. And so now this is what happens. So you have people who begin to jump from relationship to relationship because this one went bad because of unresolved issues. And then he's giving them his car. And then they go to the next relationship, unresolved issues again, with another person with unresolved issues, another scar. And then they keep trying, the next and the next. And because our research necessarily does not tell us that there could be something fundamentally wrong with us. We think it's the world. We think it's other people. We think it's people not understanding us. And so we're not really sitting down sometimes to say, well, maybe it's my fault. Maybe I'm not improving on myself. Maybe I'm not looking for a way to get better. And so for that kind of person who likes love now, but has been scarred by love, and so love becomes one of their scars. So you see, many other scars, including love. Meanwhile, it's beneficial to be in relationships, it's beneficial to be married, because it helps, companionship helps in a lot of things. And what companionship would have helped in, now you're not deficient in that, because you've had wrong or bad experiences. Why? Because we refused to work on certain things. Praise the name of the Lord. Are you with me? So what am I saying? Is first, let us seek help. And I know, and I hold this opinion daily. It's studied, well, there's no published research on it. And I know people say, okay, I won't say it. Should I say it? You're not interested. Everybody say yes. Let's go on. Okay, thank you for begging me. You know, a lot of times we say the Bible has the answers to everything. It necessarily does not. Praise the name of the Lord. You can't study your Bible to become a doctor. Can you? All right. But medical science is God's idea. It's not necessarily in the Bible or in the church. Because it can't be the devil's wisdom. All right? The devil is to kill, to steal, and to destroy. So everything about the devil is to kill. But then God's idea is medical sciences. And if he has put that there, then we can find help there. I've met a lot of people who have severe anxiety, but we refuse to visit a doctor. I've met people who say they are depressed, but we refuse to visit a doctor. And I know sometimes they say, well, because it doesn't work. But it's because sometimes we don't know that our life depends on some of these things. And if you know truly your life depends on it, if your life depends on the food you'll eat, you look for food anywhere. Praise the name of the Lord. And then there should be that encouragement for it. So you look for it anywhere. Whatever it will cost you, whatever help you need, you've got to find help so that you can be a better person for yourself, a better version of yourself, and for the person you'll be in a relationship with, so that you don't scar people and so that you don't bring children that you will scar. Praise the name of the Lord. All right, I'm running out of time already, and I had a couple of points. So I'll go back to, all right, let me jump into my other point. Have we gotten that? If you need help and you've prayed and you find out it's taking time, Just to tell you, medical science is God's idea. Find help. Praise the name of the Lord. Can Christians be depressed? Yes. Can Christians have anxiety? Yes. The Bible has a fix for it. True. But then while fighting the good fight of faith, while waiting for your answers, God's idea is medical sciences. And then the other part of it too that I want to talk about will be behavioral. So we find people who have grown in different contexts. And again, because of the age of information, or the amount of information we have, people have discovered the kind of different issues that they have or grew up with. So for some people, they discovered the way they grew up, they were open to abuse. There was a lot of abuse. For some people, they grew up in dysfunctional families, which is none of your fault, just in case there's someone like that. You didn't cause it. You didn't make yourself. And the fallen world created an opportunity for that. But now that you've discovered, you've got to take a step to coming out of that situation. Now, this is the reason we as humans underrate how much we've learned unconsciously from history. Praise the name of the Lord. So, for example, someone says, oh, my parents don't know how to handle money, and it has put us in this kind of situation. Now, it's good that you've discovered that fault, but unconsciously, you've learned from that history. And if you do not take an active step out of it, you will repeat these same things. And then before you repeat the same things, you will deny. So, but is that not the reason why in this situation? I will never do it. I will never do it. You will never do it. You're saying you will never do it because the opportunity has not presented itself. It's the same thing. People who grew up in maybe homes where there was domestic violence. And then you see some people, I will never lay my hands on a woman. No, it doesn't happen that way. You have to consciously get out of it. You have to consciously read something. Because the only response you have known to aggression is to hit. Praise the name of the Lord. And so when you're faced with that situation, you will react with the only response you know. Praise God. Now, unfortunately, I don't have time to prove it scientifically and all of that. But that's true. Because it's something you've learned, you react with. We react as a reason of the information we have. And so the only reason you speak English is because you've heard English. And praise the name of the Lord. You're not going to speak French. You can't say, oh, I don't like this English. And then you didn't consciously learn French. And so someone say bonjour. You say, comment? What are you going to say? You don't have anything to say because you've not consciously unlearned what you know or consciously learned something new. And like I said, it's not anybody's fault for whatever context they are born in. But moving forward, it will be your fault to respond as a product of the context and the history you were born in. And so that leaves us with being researchers. That leaves us with identifying what is wrong with us and immediately trying to fix it. Not many people want to be abusive. Praise the name of the Lord. I mean, have you seen someone who maybe was arrested for a crime? You see them, you see how they look. Some innocent. Right? You look like this guy wouldn't hurt a fly. But why did he do that? He knew only one response. And that response he knew, he didn't make a conscious effort to learn another. He didn't make a conscious effort to just maybe sit down in his house and build up scenarios. And we can take that as practical steps. You want to build up a scenario of aggression and just see how you react within you. And some people have failed already just now. Because you build up a scenario of aggression of how someone spoke to you. And you've seen how, for one, you've given them double. Praise the name of the Lord. You see that now? That's how you respond because it's in your subconscious. You've seen how if someone speaks to you anyhow, you're not going to take that nonsense. I will deal with them. I will show them. Because do you know who I am? You see now? That's the response, you know. So what am I saying to us is that we've got to take conscious efforts. So in areas that pertain to mental health, we've got to seek help. It's a Christian thing to seek help. Praise the name of the Lord. It's a Christian thing to do what? To seek help. It's a Christian thing to decide to work on yourself. Work on yourself for your spouse, your future spouse. And I know some people say, well, why are you working on yourself for a person? It's good to work on yourself for people. Praise the name of the Lord. Because you want to go be a good person for the one. You want the one to be a good person for you. And so, I'm saying that this generation, of course, I'm speaking to a few people, few sample size, which may not mean so much in the entire world. Because compared to the amount of Gen Zs and millennials and Generation Alpha that we have, and how many are these? But thank God, God multiplied bread. All right? You know, when he said, what is this among so many? But then the Lord blessed the food. And then he multiplied. But I'm saying that we can actually make a difference. We can be better people. Much more in the church. Because in the church, we shouldn't be finding or we shouldn't be seeing cases of toxicity. We shouldn't be seeing cases of violence, domestic violence, abuse. In the church, we shouldn't be seeing cases of anxiety and depression. In the church, we should have people who are working on these things, who are making conscious efforts to get them out of the way. And I believe we can have churches with good spouses, with good marriages, with good every kind of thing you can think of. But it doesn't just happen automatically. It takes people making concerted efforts, conscious efforts. Praise the name of the Lord. So with these few points of mine, I hope I've been able to convince you and not confuse you. Well, what I'm saying is, as young people, let's take the responsibility to better ourselves. Let's take the responsibility to seek help. You don't have to cause issues before you seek help. The whole world doesn't have to fall on you. Your whole world doesn't have to come crumbling before you seek help. If you find a dysfunctionality, if you find something you're deficient in, then begin to take steps towards being a better person. Praise the name of the Lord.